Motor Company has been able to pay dividends out of earnings in every year since 1947. The direct results of your efforts, as far as the foundation is concerned, are reflected on the right side of the chart. Last year, 1953, dividends paid on Ford stock owned by the foundation total $46,348,620. Dividends, of course, still make up most of the foundation's income. The remainder, less than 4%, comes mostly from government bonds. In the first year of the foundation's history, the trustees all were associated with the Ford family or with the company. Later, when the foundation's assets increased so greatly, we felt that the public interest should be the dominant force in foundation affairs. We therefore sought the leadership of outstanding public-minded men from many walks of life for our board. Today, the foundation has, as trustees, a group of very able business and professional men of exceptional reputation in their fields. All foundation activities are subject to approval in the first instance and to constant review and appraisal thereafter by the trustees. Each member of the board regards his duties seriously and with a great sense of responsibility. Their decisions, I feel, reflect a cumulative wisdom of experience equaled in few other organizations. I think you should know who these men are. This is Frank W. Abrams, long active in philanthropic work, particularly in education. With Standard Oil for 40 years, he was chairman of its board for 8 years until his retirement at the end of 1953. James F. Brownlee is consultant to the director of the Office of Defense Mobilization, a partner in the banking firm of J.H. Whitney and Company. He was formerly vice president of General Foods and president of Frankfurt Distilleries Incorporated. John Coles is publisher of the Des Moines Register and Tribune and the Minneapolis Star and Tribune. He has served on the boards of the Associated Press and Audit Bureau of Circulation, and has held a number of other civic and business posts. This is Donald K. David, well-known American educator and dean of the Harvard Graduate School of Business Administration. He is a member of the board of directors of Ford Motor Company and other corporation boards. Mark Etheridge, publisher of the Louisville Courier Journal and the Louisville Times, has been a newspaper man most of his life. He has also been a member of several presidential advisory committees and of several missions overseas for our government and the United Nations. Lawrence Gould, president of Carleton College, Northfield, Minnesota, is a geographer, geologist, and explorer. He was second in command on the first Byrd Antarctic expedition and participated in other expeditions to the Arctic. John J. McCloy, attorney, is chairman of the Chase National Bank of New York. Perhaps he is better known to the public for his government service, which was climaxed by several years as United States High Commissioner for Occupied Germany. Here is Charles E. Wilson, the famous Electric Charlie, who was president of General Electric from 1940 to 1942, and again after wartime government service from 1944 to 1950. He was also director of the Office of Defense Mobilization and is now chairman of the executive committee of W.R. Grayson Company. The Honorable Charles E. Wazansky, Jr. is judge of the U.S. District Court, Boston, Massachusetts, and is president of the Board of Overseers of Harvard University. H. Round Gaither, Jr., the president of the foundation, whom you will meet and hear from shortly, also is on the board, together with my brother Benson and me. These, then, are the men who have the job of directing, approving, and reviewing the policies and operations of the Ford Foundation. The organization they supervise is vastly different from that begun by my father and grandfather 18 years ago. But the scope of the Foundation's work is fully in keeping with the large and imaginative scale of activities they envisioned. Late in 1948, the trustees appointed a study committee of outstanding Americans to take stock of our existing knowledge, institutions, and techniques in order to locate the areas where the problems are most important and where additional efforts toward their solution are most needed. Mr. Gaither was chosen to direct the work of the committee. He was known to the trustees as an able attorney, familiar with a broad range of philanthropic activities. He had made an excellent record as assistant director of the MIT Radiation Laboratory. This was the largest single American unit for research and development in World War II, and was responsible for developing offensive and defensive radar. His study committee was composed of men widely known and respected in such fields as education, medicine, the humanities, government, and modern business and industry. In assembling the material for its report, the committee traveled 250,000 miles and interviewed more than 1,000 experts in almost every kind of human effort. The dimensions of this research job can perhaps best be visualized by the reports that came out of it. These volumes, which are themselves boiled down from millions of words of fact-finding, the raw material on education alone ran to 3,400 pages. For convenience, the final conclusions of the study committee were condensed into this book. The study committee recommended that the Foundation should find and attack the basic causes of human problems, rather than attempt to relieve the disastrous consequences of those problems. In other words, the committee thought the Foundation should seek the causes of floods and their cure, rather than finance soup kitchens for flood victims. The committee believed that the Foundation could fulfill its responsibilities best by providing what we now call the venture capital of human progress. Among other things, this meant facing up to the great need for exploration of some of the controversial areas in human affairs. The study committee felt that the Foundation's primary mission was education for democracy. In practice, the Foundation's areas of interest and activity are more precise than this. But basic to every program and project is the intention to increase the number of people capable of thinking and working constructively toward a better life for all of us. For our purposes, we define the word education in its broadest sense. We meant it to apply to young and old, high school students and college students, adult men and women, the learned and the illiterate. In fact, every group of modern society. It was only in this wide range we felt that the Foundation would work effectively toward the aims it had adopted for itself. 5 major programs of action through which the Foundation could realize its objectives emerged from the recommendations of the study committee. First, international programs, covering efforts which could contribute to world peace. Second, public affairs programs, strengthening the institutions and ideals of democracy. Third, economic programs aimed at improving free economic systems and increasing individual economic well-being. Fourth, educational programs, an effort to better the means and opportunities for learning in America. And fifth, the behavioral science programs, supporting efforts to study man's nature and to increase his potential for a creative, productive, and happy life. Now, to give you a more specific report on what the Foundation is doing in these 5 programs, I would like to introduce the President of the Foundation, Mr. H. Rowan Gaither, Jr. Mr. Gaither.
Thank you, Henry. I'm glad to be able to talk to you today about the Ford Foundation. You have a special interest in it because your work keeps it going. But more than that, as American civic and business leaders, you have a general interest in how a public trust as large as the Ford Foundation conducts its affairs. And because the Foundation is a public trust, we welcome every opportunity to report on all we're doing. Today there is time to give you only a sampling of our activities. However, in our annual published reports, we make public every activity we undertake. Let me show you just how much we have granted in the 3 years of expanded operation from 1951 to 1953. The total is approximately $119 million. Of this sum, $87.5 million was for activities within the United States. Another $19 million was for United States institutions operating abroad. The grants that went directly to foreign colleges and institutions totaled approximately $12.5 million. As Mr. Ford told you, one of the Foundation's major aims is to contribute to peace. We have no delusions of grandeur that our efforts alone can prevent another world war. But in an age of hydrogen bombs, we feel there is nothing closer to the hearts and interests of the American people than to work for a peaceful world. Let me give you some examples of the work we have done toward this objective. In Western Europe, the war left 15 million refugees uprooted and helpless. Here are some of the pictures of what has been happening to these people. To help them find homes and employment, the Foundation has given grants to 13 agencies and to the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. Many of them were running away from tyranny. None of them seemed to belong or to be welcome anywhere. Their appearance in any of the countries in Western Europe, which were themselves struggling to recover from war, created burdensome problems for their hosts. Yet 15 million people are a political force, an economic force, a moral force. They cannot be ignored. Some 200 projects have been undertaken to resettle the refugees, to provide job training for the thousands of displaced young people of working age, to care for the orphans and the handicapped, to arrange loans for farm equipment or the start of a new business, to help the victims of war and tyranny to find useful, dignified, and peaceful lives. Now let me turn to the map. In Europe, we gave money to build a library and lecture hall at the Free University of Berlin, an institution established following the war for students who refused to attend the communist-dominated university in the Russian sector of that city. In the Middle East, an area of great poverty and political tension, we have given help to schools and hospitals and vocational training centers in order to help develop local leadership and democratic institutions. In Pakistan, we are helping the government train mechanics, teach women domestic skills, improve rural life, and plan the country's economic development. In India, we are carrying on a general program of agricultural development improvement of village life, and development of village industries. Sometimes our efforts in this distant part of the world are misconstrued. For example, you may have heard a well-known newscaster speak these words.
The Ford Foundation has allocated 250,000 American dollars to the American Council of Learned Societies for the study of Telugu. It has handed over this $250,000 for the study of Telugu, which is a neglected Oriental language spoken mainly in Hyderabad, India. If the disturbed dead would turn in their graves, old Henry would be whirling tonight.
What this newscaster didn't know is that Telugu is today the language of more than 30 million people, more than populate all of Indochina. Most of them live in Andhra on the eastern coast of India. It is true that the language has been neglected by us, but not by the Russians. Telugu language publications from Moscow are distributed every day. There is a Russian Telugu dictionary. There is no comparable English dictionary. We feel that the $250,000 grant to the American Council of Learned Societies will be money well spent if part of it is used to help bridge the language gap between the free world and those millions of Indians. Operating in the countries on the border of the communist world has its risks. These are the sectors where the communist and democratic ideas are in conflict every day. The Foundation will not work in communist countries. We do not try to buy people's friendship or allegiance. We would withdraw our support from a country the minute a communist takeover appeared inevitable. But we are willing to enter the fight to spread democracy and to help any country that wants democracy to achieve it. We're willing to do this even though at times the tide seems to be running against us, even though a country acting as our host does not do everything exactly to our liking. To pull out on this kind of a provocation would simply leave the battlefield to communism. Our work in the critical areas of the Near East and Southeast Asia is supervised on the spot by our overseas representatives. Let's look in on them at their recent annual conference in New York. See what kind of men they are. Hear what they have to say of their work.
Doug, can you tell us the reasons why the village program in India has moved with such speed over the past 2 years?
Two important reasons. One was that the people of India had already made up their minds that they wanted to initiate a village improvement program. The second one was the program was organized to meet a very pressing problem facing the people of India. That problem was shortage of food within the villages. We helped them organize and carry forward 15 areas of 100 villages each. And then we helped them organize 34 centers to train the multipurpose village workers. These centers are now turning out between 4,000 and 5,000 village workers a year trained to do village work.
Well, this leads me to say that in the case of Burma, one of the things which impresses me over there is the fact that while we talk about assistance for underdeveloped areas, actually the people are doing it themselves. I saw one very impressive site in one rural area in Burma where there were literally 1,000 people with their teams of oxen building up the bund so that when the monsoon came and the rains came, they'd have a sufficient supply of water for their rice production during the next season.
Incidentally, in connection with rural development, there is another aspect of the problem. That is the problem of providing leadership for these programs. At the American University of Beirut, we have helped to establish a school of agriculture. Now, this school of agriculture has been conceived of and is already working in a regional sense. It is turning out leaders for rural development and agricultural improvement for the entire Near East area. Now, to get back to helping others to help themselves.
That shows you some of the thinking, the work and the hopes that go into the making of a grant. Now let me show you a picture of what happens on the receiving end of a grant. These scenes are from a film which shows the problems of a man and his wife who have been trained by the government of India with foundation help. Their job is to work with people like these who make up 83% of India's population.
The people are still not friendly. Some of the younger men have spoken briefly with my husband. It is easier for him going out by himself, being a man. The ladies of our village do not call me with bad names, but they will also not speak. Even the children turn from me.
When I came home after this, I found my wife sitting in the yard. She was dressed in a white sari, which is not used for work.
I said, it is not that I do not wish to work, but I cannot live in the village any longer. I did not want this. My place is in the city. Here I cannot be of use. My husband asked, why? How is it that you say this? Is it not that you spoke with pity of the dirty children who must work in the fields instead of being taught in schools? Is it not that you remarked about the women who pollute the well water? Is it not for you to teach them these things? Did we not promise to work for healthier conditions in the village so that there will be less disease? Have you forgotten this? No, it is not that I have forgotten, I said. I have tried and tried and tried. But what am I to do for the dirty children if their mothers turn them away from me? What am I to do for the village people? What can I teach the man who covers his face when I walk by? What can I teach the women who slam the door in my face? I have not seen the light of kindness in any of these faces. Hardly anyone has ever spoken to me here. There is a wall between us and the village people. Do you not understand that I cannot stay here? But then my husband spoke angrily and said,
"It is my will."
It was his will. It may be that today I succeeded. Perhaps I shall be a teacher again. It happened that when I came from the well, I saw Mrs. Sukari working. I asked to be allowed to help her. She was surprised that I would do such dirty work, but everything must be learned. Then I said, learning this from you, why is it that you cannot learn from me also? And I asked to make her ready to read and write. She said, the men can learn to read, but not the women. I then said, that is good. Do only men take food and not the women? Then she began to laugh and said, soon I will come.
Today we carried the plough to the field where Shri Prasad was working. He bent down to look at the plough. I told the others to look at it also, and they did, feeling it with their hands. Then I asked Shri Prasad to try this tool. He was now willing to do it because the other farmers were watching. He took his plough away and tied the new plough to the oxen. Then I spoke briefly to the farmers and explained how this old plough does not let them take advantage of their good soil because it makes them use the same parts over and over. Your soil is rich underneath also, I said. This plough will bring it out. Then I spoke to Shri Prasad. Now start to plough.
Now let's come back home to the United States, where 73 cents out of every foundation dollar is spent. The public affairs program of the foundation is intended to strengthen the basic principles of freedom and democracy and to secure greater allegiance to the ideas on which our country was founded. Let me show you some pictures. These suggest danger spots in our democratic society. They do not show the greater story of the general good health of that society. But it is in the danger zones that work must be done. Within the space of not too many years, this country has gone through 2 world wars and a depression, and is now in the midst of a Cold War that may continue indefinitely. These conditions have put great stresses and strains on our system of government. In down-to-earth terms, our public affairs program is intended to do something about the efficiency and effectiveness of local, state, and federal government, the justice with which our laws are administered by local, state, and federal courts, the protection of basic freedoms as stated in our Bill of Rights, the participation by citizens in public affairs at all levels from local, school district to presidential campaigns. The Foundation is supporting several activities relating to these problems. Its most ambitious action has been the establishment of the independent agency known as the Fund for the Republic. Under the direction of responsible and patriotic citizens, its program is just getting underway. The fund is not to investigate the investigators, as someone has said, although the methods used by investigating committees is an appropriate object of study for any group of citizens. We have made a grant to the American Bar Foundation to improve the administration of criminal justice. We have given grants to organizations like the Civil Service League to improve the efficiency of government. Such grants are rarely dramatic, but they are of vital long-term importance. All these activities are directed toward one goal, the internal strength of America, by making the American system work so that we can preserve free enterprise, maintain our freedom, and meet effectively our responsibilities as a world leader. Note that emphasis on free enterprise. It is the concern of the 3rd major part of the Foundation's program. Here are some of the sore spots in our nation's economy. A vigorous economy is basic to our national strength. We're giving more and more attention to this aspect of our work. As the first step, we called together a group of leading American businessmen and economists. We asked them to recommend specific jobs for the Foundation to tackle, and on their advice, several important projects were started. We sponsored the Mid-Century Conference on Resources held in Washington last year. It covered every aspect of the conservation, development, and use of our natural resources. More than 1,500 people, including the President of the United States, took part. This conference was conducted by Resources for the Future Incorporated, another independent agency created by the Foundation. In the next part of the Foundation's program, you and your children obviously have a personal stake. I am referring, of course, to education. Our educational system is the biggest in the world. Within this century, the number of young men and women in college has increased almost tenfold. Today, there are some 2.25 million students in college, and the problems have grown almost as fast as the enrollments. We don't have enough teachers. Those we have need more and better training. School administrators are seeking to introduce more up-to-date business principles. There are vast differences in the opportunities for education open to boys and girls between various sections of the country, and even within the same cities. How can we achieve greater equality of opportunity for education? How can the education of our boys be adjusted most efficiently to military service? What can be done about the schools whose very existence is threatened by the way inflation has cut into the return on their endowments. Just listing some of these problems explains why the foundation has decided not to spend money for buildings, but to concentrate on improving what goes on inside. So broad, so complex, and so important are the problems facing our educational system that the foundation has established a separate and independent agency to work on them. This is the Fund for the Advancement of Education. Former Supreme Court Justice Owen J. Roberts is chairman of its board. There just isn't time today to report to you on all the fund is doing. In a number of states, different experiments are underway designed to improve the caliber of our teachers. In cooperation with a number of high schools and colleges, experiments are being conducted to see if 16-year-olds can handle college work so that they might get through 2 years of college prior to military service. At the request of the Defense Department, the fund has prepared materials for education within the armed forces. Here is a short sequence from one of the films made by the Army under this program.
Where's another question? Front row.
Private James Atkin, Fort Dix. Mr. Kennan, I'd like to know, where is communism more popular, in Europe or in Asia?
Well, I think unquestionably it's much more popular in Asia. In Europe today, almost everyone understands what communism is. In Asia, unfortunately, I think there are an awful lot of people still who don't understand what it is. They've got it confused there with other things, and that presents for us one of the greatest problems we Americans have in foreign affairs.
You don't have to be out of school very long to learn that your education has just begun. There is a growing demand for better materials, better techniques, better planning of education for adults. To work in this important field, the Foundation created another independent agency, the Fund for Adult Education. The chairman of its board is Clarence Francis, board chairman of the General Foods Corporation. Through a variety of methods, the fund is trying to help adults become better informed on national and international affairs, on the richness of the American heritage, on the great books and the great ideas of history. Most of the people in this film came from cities where the fund is helping local groups coordinate their adult education activities. The successful methods they develop will spread to other communities. In this way, the democratic process is strengthened. There are many thoughtful people who contend that television is the most powerful educational force since the invention of movable type. Probably no man is wise enough to predict what the ultimate impact of television on the human mind will be. But from the beginning, the Foundation has recognized the importance of trying to develop television's educational possibilities. The growth of educational television has been stimulated through the Fund for Adult Education. The fund has offered to match money raised locally for building and operating educational television stations in 30 cities and university centers. Stations are already on the air in Houston, Los Angeles, East Lansing, and Pittsburgh, and others will soon be operating. With help from the fund, a center to produce and exchange good program materials for these stations has been established at Ann Arbor, Michigan. Some experts in this new field contend that educational television will reach some of the people some of the time, but that to reach most of the people some of the time, you need to work in standard television. In this connection, Alistair Cook, speaking for the Ford Foundation's TV radio workshop, had this to say on Omnibus's final program for the 1953-54 season.
Now, you saw a little while ago excerpts from 26 of the programs that have been put on Omnibus this season. They ranged from Jack Benny to Orson Welles' King Lear, from the birth of a seahorse to the preparation of the New York Times. We hope to go on bringing you a program that is consistent with the aims of the Ford Foundation, which in the first place puts the program on. Now, you know, from the start, Omnibus has welcomed advertisers because the Ford Foundation believes strongly in the American system of commercial broadcasting. Though its aims are such that it would be prepared to underwrite the cost of the program with or without advertisers. But in Omnibus, its purpose is simply to try and fulfill one of those aims, which is to help the development of television as a new medium for all the people to enjoy and profit by, and a medium which could well reflect the world we live in.
During the past year, Omnibus reached a weekly audience of as many as 18 million people. The TV radio workshop series for young people, known as Excursion, was seen by a weekly audience of as many as 9 million people. These figures show how large an audience good television can reach. The effects of this enterprise are showing up on your television screens as other producers have followed the workshop's presentations from week to week. Well, all of that will give you some idea of what the Ford Foundation is doing in the field of education. So far, we have covered 4 fields of Foundation activity: international affairs, public affairs, economics and business, education, and the common denominator of all of them is, of course, man himself. How can we predict more reliably the behavior of the Soviet Politburo until we have more scientific knowledge of the driving forces of Russian society? How can we cope with juvenile delinquency until we know more about the influence of the home, school, television, and the movies on the child? How can we cope with some of the problems of industrial management and labor relations without knowing more of the attitudes, needs, and aspiration of men at all levels of our society? One of the oddities of the 20th century is the fact that we know the innermost secrets of the atom, but about man himself we know very little. Until we know more, it's hard to see how some of our problems can be solved. The social sciences, which are concerned with the study of man's behavior, are not even at the Model T stage. They are hardly at the horse and buggy stage. But the start that has been made gives us confidence that the Foundation can, with the outlay of modest sums of money, make an important contribution to this aspect of human progress. Our behavioral science program is a result of this conviction. A major project under this program has been the establishment of the Center for Advanced Study in the Behavioral Sciences near Palo Alto, California. The center will bring together scholars from all fields which touch on human behavior so that they can begin to pool their knowledge for scientific advance in this field. All the way through this talk, you have heard me refer to Foundation grants. That is a word we use to describe what in effect are our investments. Every investment represents a decision by the Foundation Board of Trustees, but behind those decisions is obviously a great deal of staff work. This chart shows how we are organized to do our job. Each main element of the program is a responsibility of an associate director. Don Price for international programs, Dyke Brown for public affairs, Tom Carroll for economics and business, Bill McPeak for education and human behavior. As the proposals are submitted to the Foundation, sometimes they're originated inside, generally they come to us from the outside. They are analyzed by the staff under the associate director responsible. In the process of this, the views of experts and informed persons are sought. If a proposal survives the analysis of the staff, it is then sent to the program committee. The program committee is composed of all of the associate directors and the secretary of the Foundation. If they recommend it, it comes to the president. It is the president's responsibility then to decide whether to submit it to the Board of Trustees. The Board of Trustees is composed not only of capable, distinguished men, but hard-working men. The full board meets at least 4 times a year for 2 days of each meeting. In between meetings, the executive committee acts on matters of general concern to the foundation, including some program proposals. Also, there are meetings of the Finance Committee, which is concerned not only with the finances and investments of the foundation, but its overall organization and administration. From top to bottom of the foundation, there is devotion, even dedication to the job at hand. There is a deep sense of responsibility, particularly in these formative years. There is a keen sense of awareness of the opportunity of our trust. We know that if we do our job well, every conscientious citizen will find inspiration in the Ford Foundation. We know this because of what it stands for. The Foundation seeks to promote peace because peace is indispensable to progress, indeed the survival of man. It promotes allegiance to and the strengthening of our democratic institutions because they are fundamental to any fruitful concept of human welfare. It recognizes that economic strength is essential to progress. It believes education is vital to a free society, and it believes a more scientific understanding of man will speed his advancement. These, then, are the ways in which the Ford Foundation pursues the ideal of its founders, the advancement of human welfare. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Round. Gentlemen, what you have just seen shows why I feel the Foundation is a sound enterprise that is being well run. I feel sure its investments in human progress will pay dividends to all mankind.